My parents got divorced and remarried 5 times. I wanted to work out how far my body could go and how far my mind could take my body. There was a guy who was running the Marathon des Sables, which is the toughest foot race on earth. So 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert, self-supported, carry all your own stuff. So I signed up for the MDS. Ben, you need to shape up, which was the hardest thing I've ever done. People get lost, people die. Our race was the longest one in history.
Incredible. You said, I guess that's my ego. I sense that's a bullshit statement.
That hurts. That hurts, Ezra. If we put half-empty batteries in that environment, it's never going to be optimal.
100%.
Really big one that I'm loving at the moment is the impact of AI. I saw something that wasn't truly meritocratic. Creating empires, I was a bit like, that's terrible.
You believe you can have whatever culture you want in today's society?
Yeah, that's a great question.
This is Ben Stocken. He is the CEO and the founder of West Peak Leadership Development Consultancy. They're a high-performance training business for leaders and leadership. Today, we've got the opportunity to talk about how businesses are having to face the challenges of a changing landscape in order to maximize their performance. We're in unprecedented times, and leaders and founders need to find a way to adapt to that. It's a brilliant conversation. I love the fact that he's partnering with businesses in order to help leadership teams and founders of organizations to understand and adapt to the changes that they are facing in order to design development programs for their leadership to absolutely propel them forward in today's economy. Yeah, good to meet you.
You too.
The man in leadership. Highly recommended.
Highly recommended?
Yeah. Was it Ben Cawthorne that introduced us?
Yeah.
I love his energy.
I haven't done the thing for them yet. So even though highly recommended, I think that's come from a couple of other rec CEOs. But yeah.
Well, it's a good thing, isn't it, I guess, if your name is kind of transcending the industry and it's actually getting into the suppliers of the space.
Yeah, it's good. And we probably do like 20% recruitment stuff now. So,
right.
So it's good that I still get referrals.
But it didn't start there for you, did it?
No.
From what I read.
No, exactly. Like, how far back do you want to go?
Let's go back to the start. So where did life begin?
So I had like a mixed childhood. Should we go back that far?
Definitely.
Yeah. I had like a mixed childhood. Like my parents got divorced and remarried 5 times when I was growing up. So like pretty mixed.
Incredible.
And I was really fortunate that I got a sports scholarship to a really good school down in sunny Dorset. And sport kind of helped me from an early age. Like I loved school, loved my mates, teachers were amazing.
Yeah.
Rugby, hockey, cricket, athletics, like everything got me through my childhood pretty much.
Really?
So yeah, pretty messy, like unknown where I was going to be, which week to the next as a kid.
And what age did that start at? Start to unfold?
Probably started about 12
for
me. So probably quite formative time, like just hitting puberty.
Yeah.
Was doing like 3 weeks at 3 days at one house, 4 days at another house, all of my belongings. So I think sport and school and then into university and then into England rugby was probably, when I reflect back on it, was probably quite a natural transition to just lean into something that gave me some stability.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't know we were going to go there, but yeah, so I think that route into like rugby became my predominant sport.
Right. You're playing at a good level.
Played at a pretty good level, yeah. So I was like a fringe Saracens academy player.
Okay.
Tackling back was probably a better piece of terminology for it. And then got through university and I read sports science. So a lot of it was like physiology and human performance psychology.
Yeah.
And that really, really interested me. And then I finished university and had an opportunity to go and work for England Rugby for 5.5 years, which was awesome.
And do you link that interest in the psychology aspect back into the earlier days, do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like therapy. I do more now. Like 41 now. You're
41?
41.
Wow, mate.
Yeah.
Jesus, I need some of the water you're drinking.
Yeah. Bournemouth.
Incredible.
So 41, I've got a 7-year-old, 9-year-old boy. And I think looking at them, particularly my oldest, like he's approaching the age that I remember
Right.
some of stuff going on at home. And so of course my why is like, you know, stability and engagement and challenge for them. And I reflect back and think, why do I love enabling other people's performance? And I think it's because, like Bruce Lee, there was no one in my corner, probably
Really?
growing up.
Because the corner was continually changing.
The corner was like a
and
rotator.
I guess fucking occupied. I mean, I'd imagine if there's that much change,
Yeah.
your mum and dad are super occupied with the highs and lows of either a new relationship or a...
Yeah, completely. So to be fair to them, they were probably doing their best at the time, but their best was ever changing. Different stepbrothers, sisters, etc., coming and going. I just think that me and my brothers and sisters were probably at the bottom of the pile of priorities. But look, school was incredible. I was really, really fortunate to be able to lean into a great school. Had a scholarship to go there. It's called Claysmore.
Right.
So it's in the countryside in Dorset. Yes. I had pretty much a full sports scholarship to go there, which was awesome. When I look back, some of the teachers I had, they were probably like, you know, family that I leaned into.
I guess when I look at my earlier formative years, I recognise that my kind of the perceptive abilities, I'm quite perceptive in a lot of ways. And my interest in psychology, I think, comes from that, dealing with some of those environmental factors as a child.
Yeah. You
become incredibly perceptive. And I don't know if you feel like is that kind of put you in emotionally in tune with?
Yeah, it's weird. Like if you speak to my wife, she'd say that I'm very shut off. I'm very good at controlling scenarios, and I think there's that reading a room, working out the people in the room and what I need to achieve from that room, but also then like what the vibe is. So I think I've definitely become a thermostat rather than a thermometer. Like I walk into a room and I will set the tone I want in that room. And I think that's become more and more of a skill that I've developed from probably being a thermometer as a kid. I think I've had to shift.
Amazing,
so that's been a really
transition really from child to parent as well, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for my boys. Actually, it's interesting. So my oldest, I picked him up from school yesterday, and he said to me, "Daddy, I need to get better at hitting a tennis ball and at hitting a cricket ball." I was like, "Okay, well, why is that? Like, tell me a bit more." You know, straight into coach mode. Tell me a bit more. And all he wanted to do was eat. Like, he's 9, growing. So he was like, "Just give me some food." I was like, "Fine, there's some food. Now tell me some more." And he said, "Well, it's probably my weakest 2 areas right now." And he's a phenomenal athlete. He's better than I ever was. And so we got home, and he's like straight to the tennis racket, out in the garden, and he wants to learn. So a bit of me is thinking, I've got some work to do, etc. But hey, it was a beautiful day. So we were out in the back garden, and there was that bit where I wanted to jump in and be like, right, we're going to do this. This is how we're going to work on it. But actually, there's that self-awareness I think you get with age and experience of leading teams and coaching people. I was like, right, you're going to set this up. All right. So what do you want to learn? How do you want to learn it? I'll set the parameters for success. I'll set the reps, and I'll give you some pointers. But once it stops becoming fun, we stop.
Yeah.
Which I love.
So I have a 5-year-old boy, and I've never raised my voice at him once, ever. And I don't know whether this is a really bad thing, and we'll find out in years to come. But I always go immediately to the root of explaining to him what's going on, what the situation is, much broader. So, you know, look, you've just spoken over somebody, and just think about the other people in the room right now and do that. And it's interesting. I think when you talk about parameters, I think that's really important that people, they need to understand their environment as much as they need to understand themselves.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's very easy to just kind of jump in, isn't it? And say, this is what you need to do this and do that and do the third thing.
Yeah.
And also discipline with a child. I don't think that's dissimilar actually with leadership in businesses. I think there's definitely a bridge for those same skills.
Yeah. So I think, again, it was like a bit sports scientist in me. I was a bit of a sport. I was approaching 40.
Yep.
So I was 35, 36. I was probably carrying a bit of contact weight. We used to call it back in the day.
So a bit of what?
Bit of contact weight.
Right.
It's a bit, carrying a bit too much weight. And I'd stopped playing rugby ages ago. And I thought, right, okay, I'm approaching 40. I'd set West Peak up. We were about a year old, and I'd hired like our first few people. So I'd stopped pretending that it was me doing 10 days consulting a month. It was like a proper business. I was like, okay. I thought I need to get some clarity. I need to work out what, and also my boys were like, they weren't babies anymore. They were like looking at me and interacting. I was like, okay, there's some role modeling that needs to happen here. Ben, you need to shape up. And so I did something like a little bit crazy. I've never been into like cycling, running, or swimming. So what do you do? I signed up for a half Ironman. My business partner at West Peak, he's also called Ben. He's like the ideal kind of triathlete frame. Like he's like,
Right.
6'2", super skinny, great endurance machine. We've been out riding in the New Forest a couple of times. I was like, right, okay. He's like, I'm going to do this half Ironman in Marbella. I was like, Marbella sounds good. And how hard can it be? Like I could swim at school, I can ride a bike, and I can run. So I did very little training for that. Basically based off ego. Again, it's a recurring theme here. And we got to Marbella, and we were in like, they put you in these like kind of kettle you in these metal pens at 5 a.m. in the morning. And you're in these kettle pens ready to run into the sea and swim, what is it, like 1.9K. And I looked down at my Garmin, and my heart rate was doing 167 beats a minute. And I was like, shit, that's not good. Like I'm already well above my anaerobic threshold, which means I'm going to blow up.
Yeah.
And so I'm sweaty, I'm nervous. And then they start playing the Gladiator theme tune music, the very orchestral bit. He's walking through the cornfields, and my heart rate just spikes, and I'm like, I'm in a world of trouble. But I'm like, come on, training, how to like visualize you leaping through those waves like a salmon, etc. So anyway, off we go. And I'm running into the sea. We get through the surf, and I feel like I'm on Baywatch. It's amazing. Get out past the surf. I look up, and I am cooked. I'm out of breath, like doggy paddle. And I'm thinking, literally, this weird in those moments that the stuff goes through your mind. I was thinking, if I get out now, I can have some patatas bravas and a couple of beers. And when he comes back in, we can have a nice night out. And that all happened whilst I was doggy paddling. There's like 1,000 people swimming next to me. And at that moment, they've got these big, like triangular buoys. They're huge, like pyramids out in the sea, and you have to go out and swim past them. And that's how you can see them when you're swimming. And I saw someone touch the first one, which was just 250 meters from the coast. So I haven't done much yet. And this lady touched it. Jet ski comes in, whips her out, and she's done. Like that's her race done. And in my head, I was like, 500 euros to enter. We've flown out here, etc. And then I was like, my boys said to me, like, Daddy, you're going to bring back a medal. I remember saying to them, yeah, of course I'm going to bring back the medal. And so in that moment, I was like, crap, I need to get to that buoy. So I thought, right, well, I'll just get to that buoy. So I had to, like, this is really frowned upon in triathlon circles. I did breaststroke to the buoy, got to the buoy, and you turn left and you look down the coast. There's another 16 of these buoys, like 250 meters apart, whatever. And it looks like forever. And I was like, oh, all right, off I go. And so, like, to my eternal shame, I did breaststroke for the whole of that swim. And the only way I could work it out was by smallifying, like, the challenge. So smallify the challenge, and I counted every single stroke from buoy to buoy to buoy.
Wow.
And then I averaged it in my head as I was catching each buoy. So I was like, what's my average? Can I get my average down whilst I'm doing it? Whilst everyone's swimming past me and I'm on my own at the back. 87 was the average by the end. And I got out of the swim, and I felt invincible. I was like, it's amazing. And you realise you've got a 90-kilometre bike ride to go, and my heart rate's like 180. And the bike ride, I didn't look at the course map either. And the bike ride is basically like 10k out, 40k up, 40k down, round a roundabout, and the same again. So that was hard. And then the half marathon, at the end, I came into like transition. You like got off your bike, came out to do the run, And I was like, oh, I feel great. It's amazing. And I looked down at my watch. I was doing just over 4.5 minute kilometers. I was like, that's not good. That's way too fast. I did another one. I was like, that's really not good. And then I blew up. I had to walk. So I walk a shame to finish. So the moral of that story was, that was the first bit. We finished that. And I was like, I'm never doing anything like this again. This is ridiculous. Like, I'm a rugby player, play a game, lift some weights, have some beers, done. And I got home, gave the boys the medal, etc. Didn't really tell the story to my wife, because she'd be like, you're never doing anything like that again. And a week went by, and I thought, I wonder what would happen if you actually trained. I wonder what happened. So I signed up for a full Ironman in Barcelona for the next year. Full Ironman.
How long ago is this, Bowie?
So this was 4 years ago was the half.
Right.
Then the next year, so 3 years ago, got a coach. Get a coach. The coach needs a coach. Get a coach. Got a coach. Did all of the training. Yep. Barcelona Ironman, cruised it.
Incredible.
Had the best race ever. It was amazing. Came in and I thought I'd missed my time by a couple of minutes, and I'd lost an hour somehow. I was an hour faster than what I thought I was, but it was brilliant. So that was amazing, and that was a lesson in, right, if you actually put your body in the right place, your mind can look after the race day. Yes. And I got back from that, and I sat down on the sofa with my wife, and she was like, what's next? I was like, well, that felt really easy. The half felt hard. That felt really easy. I feel like my mind can get my body to do more. And so I was 39 at the time, and my wife said to me, she's like, well, you're 40 next year. I know you're going to want to do another challenge, but what do you want to do for your birthday? Do you want to go to Vietnam or what do you want to do? And I said, well, I remember as a kid, and we talked about bad TV, a couple of channels. Yep. I remember watching Live and Kicking as a kid. Right. And they used to have Trans World Sport that came on in bits of it. Yep. And there was a guy who was running the Marathon des Sables, which is the toughest foot race on earth. So 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert, self-supported, carry all your own stuff. Yep. It's I want to do that. She looked at me like, yeah, okay. So I signed up for the MDS, and last year I ran the MDS.
Incredible.
And completed it, which was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yes, and incredibly dangerous as well, isn't it? People get lost on that bad boy.
People get lost, people die. I think our race was the longest one in history. And also it was the first one where they really increased the health and safety. So thankfully no fatalities, a couple of people were in comas. There was a guy in my tent. So you put in tents with strangers and you live in those tents. Right. And actually the admin, the delaying failure bit, the MDS, I've worked out with a lot of this endurance stuff, and actually a lot of business. You've just got to find ways to not fail today. And if you can not fail today, it's amazing what you can do tomorrow. And the Marathon des Sables was a big lesson in, it's a marathon every day. On sand, you carry your own food, you get rationed water, no medical intervention, otherwise you get time penalties or you get pulled out of the race. You're sleeping on a rug in the desert with 8 strangers. And what we worked out really early on as a team of 8 strangers in our tent was that there were going to be days where one of us would need looking after, and the other 7 of us would get around and look after that person, and that really helped. Incredible,
mate! You've been on a journey.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, really have.
Incredible, and I guess after you've done that first race, that half marathon, do you have that moment where it's like? I always describe it as the most difficult things you ever do are the most rewarding. Mm-hmm. And that can become an addictive hit. The dopamine that you get off of the satisfaction.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? And I think this mind. So hormones are amazing chemicals, aren't they? And you got this little factory in us producing all these chemicals that reward us, help us overcome short-term pressures. And then you got cortisol. You've got adrenaline, dopamine, and cortisol. Cortisol's the absolute worst because long-term stress. You'll know that from the intensity, the way you're working at the moment.
Yes.
And so you definitely get that dopamine hit, and you can get addicted to that dopamine hit of just finishing, just achieving. And then you want to, you probably, there's probably some, biochemistry around. You need a more intense dopamine hit from the last one. and that can get addictive. I think what helps me, what helped me and interests me is this curiosity about, like, I'm not an incredibly gifted athlete.
Yep.
Otherwise I would have been a professional rugby player. But it's just amazing what untapped capacity we have as humans if we can get in charge of our mind, which is telling us from an evolutionary standpoint, sit on the sofa and order in some delivery.
Yeah.
Like, really, that's what it's optimally saying.
Yeah.
If
It's
we
looking
can,
for the path of least resistance continually.
Completely. We're super lazy mammals, aren't we? Because that's how we survive.
Absolutely.
But actually, in today's world, I think how we can really achieve our full potential is finding ways to do the hard stuff. I mean, discipline's a great one. I love discipline over motivation, day in, day out. The last 5-6 years, I've been on a real experiment with myself on discipline. Yeah. So I wanted to work out how far my body could go and how far my mind could take my body, which we can talk about a bit later on. But it was a whole escalation of events and athletic performance to see if my brain could get my body to do something they didn't want to do. And I think that discipline is really important. And coming back to parenthood and then leading people in a business setting, I think some of the biggest mistakes I see is typical superhero cape, I want to jump in, let me do it for you, etc. Which I think if we look at the next generation not entering the workforce, they are in the workforce. A lot of the problems that managers and leaders have with their non-contemporary skill sets is they don't know how to enable this generation in the workforce because they can't understand, well, why don't you want to work it out and figure it out? So it's because a lot of that helicopter parenting that's gone on has created a lack of kind of self-starter mentality, etc., that we need to plug back in to train this generation coming into the workforce actually how to operate within the confines of markets and business, but also we need to acknowledge that they're different. So there's this setting up the framework for how we're going to play the game. So what game are we playing, first of all? And I do a lot of this with leaders. Actually, you need to understand the games you're playing. Who are your players? What are their roles and responsibilities? Do they know when they step outside of their zone, there are consequences? Because I think if I look at, there's been a couple of posts this week that have been quite timely that I've put out around micromanaging and one on performance management. And I think a lot of the failures I see in business with performance management or poor performance or unexpected performance is because the leader or the manager hasn't delegated or set the task up correctly to start with.
Yes.
And actually, the performance could be punishing. Yep. I've actually asked you to go and do something, but if you do it too well and show me up, then you're probably not going to get it again.
Gamifying business is just so liberating in many ways because I've done that with hundreds of people. When I go, how's your team? They've got a good team. And I go, great, let's put it into, take your team right now. Let's think about your fantasy football, your starting 11 or 15, right? Either one. How many of them are your starting 11? You've got a blank canvas. You can choose your starting 11. Oh, well, that's a different question. Oh, right. Okay. What is that then? Well, you're talking about, what I really want. Oh, what, was there a gap here? And it's bringing that reality, that lens over it. And I think that gamifying it and attaching it to sport and talking about what game you're playing, what roles have you got, where are your players, what are their positions, who's contributing, does everyone know exactly what their roles are, is a really powerful technique. The one thing I was going to lean into quickly, which is fascinating, and I totally agree with you. Oh my God. Leaders blaming Gen Z.
Yeah.
I'm just like, look, Gen Z are influenced by a million different modals and paradigms and experiences than I did as a kid. Mm-hmm. And so guess what? They've got more diverse interests. Do you know what I mean? They get to see millions of things across a year. And the number of leaders just holding their hands up about today's workforce and doing one of two things, either not working out, and it's your role as a leader, in my opinion, to tap into understanding what you need to do to engage the workforce, which is your point, identify those gaps. But the second point is the observation that, look, if there was 100 people, you could have probably dropped them into 4 or 5 categories of people 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Now that 100 people have all got 100 diverse views, interests, nuances. And what that means is that finding people which are interested and have the same values that you have is 10x, 100x more difficult.
Yeah.
But they fucking exist.
Yep.
They exist. And people just continue to blame. You know what I mean? Like, oh no, it's just, you can't find the people. Yes, you can. And there are people out there which are doing it. And there are people out there which have got traditional, driven, siege mentality sales flaws.
Yeah.
And they do exist. I don't know if you agree with that or not. And I'm not suggesting that's the only, that archetypal sales flaw is not absolutely what I'm advocating. But I'm saying if you think that doesn't exist today or you can't achieve it, I think it's your limiting belief that's the problem.
I think there's a place for whatever culture you set.
Yes.
And you create and you allow those people into that culture, because like as a leader or as a business owner, you're hiring people. So you're identifying the talent you want. You should have set the culture, or even just, planted the seeds of the culture you want. And from that point on, it's down to you. There's so many analogies. Like it's down to you to to farm it, hunt it, etc.
Yes.
And so if you want a really hardcore sales culture that's incentive driven, that is long hours, etc., and you are hiring people that are up for that because you've listened, you've interviewed thoroughly, that's how you're going to coach, lead, mentor, etc., then that's your culture. But I think you need to be really, really clear from the outset on consequences, accountability, parameters for success, what good looks like. But then you need to have the skill set to be able to apply that to each individual in front of you. And I think the cop out, the Gen Z cop out is a cop out for people who are lazy, don't have a contemporary skill set about how to lead people and how to enable people's performance at an individual, team and organizational level.
Do you believe that, what you just said there, I'm going to, but tell me if you disagree with it, because I'm just going to kind of sum that up.
Yeah.
You believe you can have whatever culture you want in today's society. It's just down to the leader. And it's what you're saying is it's down to you having the skill sets to create that.
100%. So look, if you're, even if you are resetting a team, like if you're there's a fantastic book by a guy called Dan Pink called When, and it's all about timing and the best times to do things, how to set teams up for success, how to reset them. And basically we reset every day, we reset every week, we reset every month, every quarter, etc. And so you have an opportunity to reset your culture at those kind of key moments. But if we look at the embryonic starting of a team, I think the biggest miss is a first-time team leader or first-time manager who's been a fantastic individual contributor, whether they're sales or operations or finance, whatever.
Yep.
There's a moment there where if they have been given the skill set and their eyes have been open to, this is the moment you can create your culture within this organization, and this is how you do it. This is the playbook for how you do it, right? In terms of behaviors, expectations, values, consequences, rewards, etc. If that is done correctly, rather than you're promoted, congratulations, go, here's some grads or whatever it might be, like build your team, build your pyramid underneath you. If the correct foundations are put in place, then what I see in really successful organizations that we've worked with is you get what I call the Walker's multi-pack effect.
The what, sorry?
The Walker's multi-pack effect.
Okay.
So pack of Walker's crisps,
Yep.
24 pack of crisps. Every crisp is the same, right? So the core culture of the organization is the same, but actually teams can have different subcultures and those flavors.
Right.
So it's all right to have a salt and vinegar, bit salesy, bit but also it's okay to have a prawn cocktail there. That's that cultural nuance that should be within the realms of the team leader or the manager. But fundamentally, you still need a core mission and value and direction. So
basically the DNA is the same, but the personalities are different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. I think it's that Gen Z piece is just mind-boggling to me that people can sit there and just blame it. And I do agree with you that it's the laziness that then you mentioned. It's the laziness, getting out your seat and going, do you know what? Let's unlock and understand the issues and problems that are much. I've got to put more effort into it. Two things: I've got to put more effort into understanding, engaging with people because they've got more diverse interests.
Yeah,
it was either football, or helping people or whatever. Now it can be anything.
Yeah.
Much more diverse. And the second part, just working much harder to find the right people with the right DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, that DNA is more diverse as well. But come back to your, let's talk about pick up from where you were saying. So you studied psychology, sports psychology.
Yeah.
And where did life go from there?
When I was playing, we had like an RFU liaison officer, like England rugby liaison officer, who was responsible for kind of your welfare.
Okay.
And then when I stopped playing kind of more, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna make it as a rugby player. I'm like, crap, what do I do? And the guy whose mine was an incredible South African guy, and he said, well, there's some coaching jobs going at England. You should apply for one. And I was like, yeah, why not? 0 coaching badges at all, but loads of ego. So I was like, yeah, cool. Put my application in. And the day before the interviews for the coaching roles, I didn't have an interview. Like, I was going to say email. Was it emails back then? Probably. I hadn't had a call, and I was working. I finished university. I was working at a Starbucks.
Okay. And
it was weird. This Starbucks was on Farnborough, like commercial estate. So it was like driving around this little electric van delivering sandwiches to like different businesses around Farnborough commercial estate. And I remember I was like, haven't got an interview. And I just thought, I'm going to give the hiring manager a call and ask why. Which retrospectively is like quite punchy, but it's a good thing to do.
Yes.
So I was like, hi, like, I know the interview's tomorrow. I haven't had a call. And I didn't know to leave the 5-second pause to close, but I just like kind of left it. And the answer back was, well, yeah, you're probably about 121st, like on the list. You've got no coaching badges, no experience. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for the feedback. And hung up. I was like, crap, that didn't go to plan. Like, I thought I was going to be, coaching for England. And then about half an hour later, I got a call back, and it was the hiring manager, who is an incredible woman called Jo Martin. And she said, look, I've had someone drop out. You are not next on the list, but would you like to come for some experience? You'll get some experience, come to the interview. And I was like, yes, I'm in. So long story short, I went along to that interview, and it was a coaching interview. So you had to run a coaching session with a bunch of kids at a school, and then you had a formal interview. And like first ever suit, bit baggy, tie. So you had to go and deliver a session, and then get dressed into your suit and go into the interview. And my session, I was last to deliver, and I looked out this field. It was a super hot day in the summer. These kids did not want to be there, and I was the last person coaching. And I looked at these kids, and they were like just crazy. And I thought to myself, like, I've got these planned drills and everything. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to play a game with them. So we went out, and I was like, right, who wants to play a game? And they were like, yeah. And we just played this game. And I just messed about with some of the rules in some of like conditions on the game that I'd been taught. And they loved it. And we had a really good game. And I got to the end of the session. I realized I hadn't done any coaching, really. I just messed about with rules. I just played with the parameters. And I went in and had my interview, and they said, like, how did you think you went? And I was like, well, yeah, I think the kids had fun. And then I had my interview, and they're like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I looked across the desk again from the regional director, who was a guy called Peter McCauley. And I said, I'd like your job. How do I get that? And I look back, and I do cringe. Like at 20, I was 20 at the time. I do cringe a bit now looking back, but the interview ended, and the next day I got a call, and the call was a bit bittersweet, because the call was, congratulations, you were actually the best of that group, but we still think that group was a bit weak, so we're going to re-advertise the role, and you're going to have to go through the process all again. So I then basically had to go for, I wasn't good enough. Like, you were good, but not good enough. So good. So I did the whole thing again, and eventually I got the role.
That's incredible.
So it was hard won. It was hard won, but working for England Rugby for 5.5 years, like straight out of education,
yes,
was amazing.
And what were you doing for them?
So it was part performance and part development. So part of it was funded by like Premiership clubs, about going into inner city London schools and getting kids who didn't want to play rugby or had never experienced rugby to play rugby as a way to keep them in school, keep them in education. We did loads of really interesting sessions in inner city schools where the kids had no PE kit, there was no grass, and they were like, sir, we can just put the judo mats down and do full contact. And probably wouldn't get away with that now, but it was amazing. Like just seeing kids, and we had kids who went from that program into like Premiership academies and ended up having rugby careers off the back of it. And then the other half of it was on the performance side. And that was where I really got a taste of learning and development, because I began to coach coaches. So as well as doing kind of elite performance coaching, an element of it was coaching coaches. And then I moved into a national trainer role, which was then overseeing coach educators. So it was looking at all of the coaching qualifications within our region and making sure that the coaches were at the right level, and how do we quality control that. So really, really varied role. Made a load of mistakes, managed my first team at 23. They were all in their 30s. I was coming into an established team. Their manager had left.
It's a brutal environment.
I remember them looking at me being like, who is this absolute bellend? And I wasn't trained to manage. So I went through this. I had 3 promotions in 5.5 years at England Rugby, and not once did they train us how to lead teams, which is mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of course is echoed across business. I left at 26 and went into recruitment, which was a complete like right-hand turn.
Coming back to that point, it is such an oversight, isn't it? Where people have got people that they give leadership roles, without giving them the license, the training to do it, really.
Yeah, I had a really great mentor. So the lady that Joe Martin I mentioned, she was my boss the whole way through my time at England Rugby. So she got promoted, I would apply for a role, I got promoted, right. Followed her all the way through. I learnt through osmosis, and I was obsessed with looking at her and seeing how she operated. And she was like empathetic, consistent. You knew where you stood, you knew where the rules were, but at the same time, like she just gave her time and expertise. And I actually, when later down the line, when I was head of people and performance at Dartmouth Partners, I managed to headhunt her out of the RFU into the world of recruitment. So she's head of people and performance at Dartmouth now.
Is she?
Yeah.
Amazing. That's interesting. Having an environment that you can truly learn from, is just absolutely critical. And the number of people which plod along uninspired or in an environment where they don't feel that they're learning something is just, you are a sum of the parts really of your environment, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you talk about that. I can look at all the different people on my journey, and I was very perceptive, very curious. So I guess I was a good sponge through my early years. And I guess that meant that I sought out people which were inspirational, influential, philosophical people with strong principles, because they were more interesting to listen to.
Do you think you did that to be ready for opportunities? I'm interested because I similarly, I reflect back, and I think if you look back at the opportunities you've taken, I wonder if you reflect on the opportunities that you've taken and you've been ready for them or just about ready for them. But do you think that sponge-like bit enabled you to be ready for the opportunities? And was that purposeful or accidental?
It's very, very, very strange. I have this weird story. So I'm originally from Cornwall.
Okay.
And in 2015-16, I wandered back to Cornwall. And I spent some time there with my family. And I spent about 6 months based down there. Fantastic time. And I'm walking through a little town, and this lady must be 75 years old. Ezra. And I'm like, oh, wow, Sue, how you doing? She goes, yeah. And she's with a friend. And it's one of my best mates when I grew up. There are 4 boys in a little village. I was one of 4 mates, basically. And it was his mum. And anyway, so she's like, oh, this is Ezra. And she introduced me to a friend. We have this little chat. And then she goes, do you know what? I tell everyone this story about you, Ezra. I go, okay, well, no idea where this is going. And she goes, you're around our house, and we've got you 4 plus a couple of other people from school, and we all turn around and go, so what's everyone want to be when they're older? Mm-hmm. And we're 8 or 9 years old. And everyone was like, I want to be a spaceman. I want to be a professional footballer. And I said, I want to be a millionaire. And I don't remember that. And I don't know where that came from, because I didn't come from an affluent, didn't know any wealthy people. No one didn't. I did not know a single wealthy person.
Mm.
And my dad was definitely very entrepreneurial, and he spoke a lot about different things, like in terms talked about principles and philosophy, about Bruce Lee, or about incredible sports people, or about incredibly interesting things about the cosmology or ancient Greece, or in a very practical way, not an academic way. And he was very commercial. So I'm guessing it came from that. I didn't go through that period of ever thinking about that consciously. I don't remember ever thinking that. And I remember getting to university, and I was dropped into university. I was in a shared house, and two of the guys were from up north. They're rugby lads, actually. And both of their dads were in industrial manufacturing businesses.
Yeah.
One, I remember, I think it turned over like 1.6 million, and one turned over like 2.8 or 3 million quid. And I kind of said, we're talking about, they told me what their dads do. And they said about, I must have asked them, I don't know how that I even knew. And they go, I think it turns over this money. I was like, what? You're the first people I've ever met. And I remember being really interested in that. And another story is that another mate of mine, I used to go to his house when I was 15 through to about 17, 18, every Friday night. And they were older than me, these boys, 3 years older than me. I played football with them. And on a Friday night, I would go to their place before we went out into the town or done some different stuff. And the dad used to collect, and he used to sell like household goods like towels, duvets, all that stuff. And every Friday night, this big table in his front room, and he would be counting money, coins, stacking things up all over. And then he had a ladder that went into his loft.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And he would just be shuffling money about, and then he would shoot up the loft, and he'd come back, do some paperwork up there, come back down. And he says that he always laughs when I see him. He's in probably like mid-80s now. And he goes, you just used to, whilst everyone else was faffing around doing whatever they were doing, you just stood next to the door watching me count money, going up and down this hatch, just completely intrigued by what's going on. And so it's a long story, but they're the kind. I don't have a lot of those data points. I've probably shared 50% of those kind of data points in my life that are memorable or noticeable. But I guess there was some level of commercial curiosity, intrigue, entrepreneurial thing. And so I'd suggest that it's absolutely something that's been kind of woven into my childhood. Yeah. By some sort of messaging. I mean, look, we're talking about 3 channels on the TV. Yeah. I wasn't. There's no internet.
You need to press them on the TV. There was no remote. And I think that's really interesting. I've got, like getting a bit older, reflecting and looking back a bit. I still feel like, as I'm sure you do, there's loads to go after. But trying to like work out a bit about success in the future and avoiding potholes and etc. by looking back. And like there were, leaving England Rugby to get into recruitment, leaving working, for Hydrogen Group, who I worked for, because I met a French couple in the south of France on holiday who owned a recruitment company in Marseille and wanted to open one up in London, and were looking for someone to open it up. Like starting that with them, and then joining Dartmouth, leaving Dartmouth on the day we went into that 3-month lockdown to set West Peak up. There are those moments, and actually, if I look back at them, like, what the hell were you playing at? Like that was super risky. Yes. But I kind of think there's this like innate like curiosity bit, that sponge bit, that I almost feel myself going around, and I think other people do, like collecting insights and bits of information and bits of data, so that when those opportunities present themselves, I think the risk profile feels different. Yes. And I wonder if you feel that.
I think a lot of it's very intuitive. Very intuitive. Dr. Dre says, have you seen the Dr. Dre, the Beats documentary?
No.
Got to see it,
okay,
Netflix.
Right.
Incredible.
Okay, I'll give it a go.
Really good. Him and Johnny, is it Johnny Ives? That created Beats and then sold it to Apple. And in the middle of it, he's an incredible guy, but I don't know if you know, but he's a musical genius. I never really understood that about him, but he's absolutely like a modern day genius. And he says something, they ask him, how have you made these decisions and stuff? And he just goes, I do what feels good. And I was like, he just is absolutely in tune with that kind of, that sixth sense and instinctive. And so I guess a lot of it comes from that, but I don't know how much of that sixth sense is guided by a set of principles and values which were deeply rooted and embedded during my childhood, and curiosity and listening was one of those. And so I'm a massive believer in your environment, and I think it needs to be the right level of hard, the right level of soft. When I think about my son, I want things to be really difficult for him. Right? He doesn't know this. We'll look back on this in years to come, but he has a bike, and that bike has the tires are 40% inflated.
Nice.
Right.
Extra resistance.
Yeah. Right. he has the hardest time driving, but he does. That's all he knows.
Yeah.
Right. But that's how he rides his bike. And I'm like, well, I'm not blowing him up. That's way more difficult. It's much better for him.
Yeah.
I think they're incredibly influential. And so, decision making is an intuitive thing, but there's an incredible discipline to it as well, which is that you have got to be committed and incredibly disciplined to the right intuitions and ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, completely. And I think it comes back to, is it aligned to like your values, how you want to live your life and what you want to achieve?
Yes.
And I talk with our team about like irreversible and reversible decisions.
Right.
Like, I don't mind you making reversible decisions, like make them, like make mistakes, but it's about understanding where the threshold is that actually this decision is an irreversible decision, which needs a pause, reflect, a process.
This is the two-way door from Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, completely.
Is it a one-way door or a two-way door?
Is it a one-way door or a two-way door?
Two-way door, just jump through it, you can come back out.
Yeah.
One-way door, think about it before you go through it.
Yeah, completely. And I also think that this might be my naivety or my uber kind of optimistic mindset on life, but I think people think that there are more one-way doors than two-way doors. Like it's quite hard to do something.
Yes.
I actually think, it's that first step, it's like
running. There are very few one-way doors.
Very few one-way doors. And actually, the running analogy is, the best way to start running is to put your trainers on. And actually, I think people build stuff up in the head and actually like, let's just start with small steps.
There's no doubt about that. Absolutely. That inaction comes from overthinking. Yeah. But there's also a fine balance to that, because I think what really, having met you for only the last 20 minutes, half an hour, I think that you think about things more than other people. I think that and maybe I've got that wrong, but I personally believe that I spend more time subconsciously and consciously processing something. That doesn't mean I don't think about it for a long time. It means that when I think about it intensively.
Yeah, I relate to that. Like intensity, I mean, like we can kind of talk about like working times and energy and what gives you energy and takes away energy. Like I piss my wife off all the time by like I get up at, this isn't like 5 a.m. club chat, but I get up at 5 a.m. It started when our eldest child always got up at 5 a.m. like from birth. And so my wife was feeding him during the night, so I'd get up and do the first shift. And I actually realized that was really productive time for me for the first time in my life. So I work now, he sleeps well now, but I work super intensively like earlier on in the day.
Right.
And coming back to your point about like reflection and compressing thinking time, it's quite empty in here like a lot of the day.
Yep.
But for periods of time, I do like really intensively scrutinize stuff. And come back to that intuition bit, I probably come to a decision relatively quickly. I might not say it out loud, but I've come to a decision relatively quickly. And then there's just that pause to be like, is that hypothesis correct or incorrect?
Yes.
Like what's going to prove it or disprove it before I do it?
That is the bit I'm talking about.
Right.
So absolutely. Your intuition says this is the right thing to do. And you've almost gone, right, I'm halfway down the path, maybe even 90% of the way down the path. Yeah. Now what I'm doing is I'm intensively thinking about this subconsciously, unconsciously, right the way up until the point I'm through any form of one-way door.
Yeah, agreed.
Talking about sleeping, I've I'm normally just like bang on. I'm not a particularly early person, like 7 o'clock, shower door. But more recently, my schedule's gone through the roof recently because of some clarity and innovation and everything. I've changed my sleeping style. And what I do now, because I'm working sometimes till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, sometimes midnight, I now sleep, I wake up 8 hours, and I don't book any meetings until after 10 a.m. And I will go back to sleep until I feel absolutely exceptional. If I haven't got mental clarity, I'll power nap, clarity, yes, no, no, and I'll keep doing it until I've got absolute clarity.
Yeah.
And I've realised that, and it's a really weird kind of process. I've never heard anyone talk about it before, but actually it's really working for me. When I'm at my top performance, I can get a week's work done in a day. And so actually taking the pressure off of my morning, and if I do need an extra 20 minutes, hour and 20 minutes to get to reset, like you were saying earlier, the kind of reset and get that mindset absolutely clear. If I feel like there's any drag, the day's not starting.
I love that. And I think, you know, we talked a bit about individualizing, and we're all people. We're all people and individual. I have similar but different kind of process routine.
Yes.
And I think routines are really important as well. So you talked about environment. We are a product of our environment. Completely agree. Yep. We are also responsible for how we show up in that environment. And I think a lot of leaders, a lot of everyone, a lot of people forget that it's kind of on them, their sleep, how they show up, etc., to be ready to perform in that environment. So you've got the environment, that's really important. But if we put half empty batteries in that environment, it's never going to be optimal. And my sleeping pattern is that I'll wake up at 5 now, normally. I'll go downstairs, it's quiet, there's no children. Like, I'll let the dogs out, stand in the back garden, have a bit of coffee, and I'll just do some work. Like, I always take my laptop out of the office from upstairs, put it downstairs, ready to go. I'll do a bit of work. But I find that I get to like 2 p.m. Even when I was working in London, if you go back like 5 years ago and I was working for Dartmouth Partners, I would find at 2 p.m. I'd have a massive energy crash, and I knew I wasn't making smart decisions, and I was procrastinating, and I might as well get on the train and go home. And I used to go for a 10-minute nap. 10 minutes. And I've kept that. And I know now, if I've got like a big pitch or a big coaching session or whatever in the afternoon, I'll take 10 minutes. Like, I set my phone for 10 minutes. I'll do it sitting up. Like, I don't care. But I do find that little reset just gives me clarity.
Yes. There is no doubt. And I think that the important part you raise there is that, you know, you've taken that into extreme sports, and good on you. Incredible. Well done. But the number of people, we're all well within our comfort zones and well under our capacity and capabilities. And it's about, and the first part of that, I think what you're saying there is, and I think it's super important. That's what I was talking about, that calibration, is just knowing what is possible, what good really looks like, what really productive looks like, what setting real high level, what real high levels of intensity or discipline or whatever it might be, and anything that you want in life, physical challenges. And I totally agree with you. The number of businesses and leaders I walk into, and the biggest thing I see is the difference in their different opinion of what good looks like. Like that's the biggest issue and problem. If they all realised 70% of them are operating at a 3 out of 10, 80%, maybe more, maybe 90%. Of which they probably value themselves at a 6, 7, or 8. If you'd say, what's your intensity? They're like, it could be better. We're probably a 6 or 7. And I'm like, okay, well, just talk me through. And you're just like, mate, you're barely on the chart. And that's the issue, because the issue isn't because necessarily they're doing less comparatively to their average competitor, but it's what really, really, really good looks like is so much greater.
And that, when I moved from working in sport to working in recruitment, my first recruitment, so I was 26 when I got into recruitment. I was really shocked by coming from an elite sporting environment where everyone's a 10. Everyone's a 10. most days.
Yes.
Because, we were scrutinized on how we operated, marginal gains, etc. Every stone is unturned.
Yeah.
And your willingness, because you buy into the environment and the culture, and the narrative is shared with you of you're doing meaningful work. And I think that really helps employees, that actually, if employees buy into the narrative, the story of the business, and that their work is meaningful and contributory, then you can unlock more will, and they can move from a 3 to a 5. And if we can do that, actually we can get them more skillful. So I think there's this will before skill bit that lots of people miss out on.
The big bit that the business leaders have to translate, which doesn't naturally exist in a team environment compared to a sporting environment, is that the goal is absolutely clear in sports.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. It's absolutely clear and it's absolutely meaningful. And the people that are in the room, 9 times out of 10 are completely aligned with it. You do have the Agassi moment where he just fucking hates tennis, which I love. I absolutely love. And I love the irony of that book. I mean, a bit of a spoiler alert, but the fact that he actually loves it, it's just the process he hasn't enjoyed. But the point is that that's what's clear. And so I talk a lot about vision. And that's why I talk about it, actually, because you have to try and make your vision, your goal, as meaningful as possible. And actually, again, being in an international sporting environment where the aim is to be, let's say, to play rugby for England, that's let's say the ultimate, or maybe the Lions, but let's call England, right? That's a very clear, meaningful vision. And that's half the job done. That's half the job done. And so I think you have to achieve that level of clarity and meaningfulness as much as you can in your business. And then once you've done that, you then have, again, created the parameters. That, and we talk about the values being the parameters and the rules of the game. But people just, in particular in recruitment, people fall into recruitment because they want to do I've spoken about this before, but what they want to do is they want to do what they've done in another company for themselves. And what that means is that they've made that transition from becoming into being an entrepreneur and being a business leader to do something they used to do, not because they've got a vision. And it's because they start in that place that they then don't understand the value of a vision, because I got from 0 to 5 people without a vision. I've got 5 to 10 people without a vision. That's a few mates and a club. Now it starts to kind of dissipate slightly, and it becomes more difficult. Well, why are people leaving? We can't get beyond this. Well, it's because you started without a vision. It's not meaningful to you. But actually, it's the ultimate goal and the clarity of that. And so that's where the sport, for me, that sporting, it's a really good analogy that you talk about. And you come into a recruitment environment, people aren't fucking 10s, they're 7s, 5, 6, 7s, 8s, they're 3, 4, 5s. And so, absolutely, how do you create that sense of purpose so that you can weed those people out?
And I think I learned it from a business environment and how to do that really well from a business and specifically recruitment. Like when I was working at Dartmouth Partners, Logan, who's the CEO there, he was very good at doing exactly that. And actually, when I left Dartmouth, I talked to a couple of people afterwards. And everyone had this perception of Dartmouth in those times. It was quite tribal. Right. And I was like, that's a really good way to describe it. There was lots of discretionary effort. Everyone played for the badge. Well, not everyone. The majority of people were playing for the badge. And the reason why was, like, Logan was really clear with everyone on the vision and our values, and what the values look like as behaviors, and what the behaviors look like as actions, and what those actions look like in terms of intrinsic motivators and extrinsic motivators. But also the vision was echoed and communicated in a variety of different ways: town halls, emails, face-to-face, one-to-ones. I built it into our career pathways. I built it into our one-to-one documents. It was everywhere. And that meant that, they were on the walls. They were definitely on the walls. All the values were up on the walls, etc. But actually, you could observe those behaviors in the way that the consultants were interacting with candidates and clients, and the managers were interacting with their consultants.
Yeah, business is fucked if the founders, the owners, the leaders don't own that vision and values. If they don't really own that, then all of a sudden you're down to luck.
Yeah, completely.
Right.
Or I mentioned that I mentioned that at the beginning of the year. Like, okay, did you think they were listening? And did you think they thought about that in their context of their day to day?
Yes.
No, they didn't. The minute you started talking about that stuff, they were thinking, yeah, where's my threshold? How much comp am I going to make? And, et cetera. Do I still want to be here?
Yeah. And the way I find that people need to do that as well is that they start to think about what the vision should be.
Mm-hmm.
When what, in my opinion, they need to think about is, why are they doing what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I get that vision to align with why I'm here and what I'm passionate about achieving? And it's people really struggle with that. It's kind of this, and that's, I think, perception, that people are worried about how they're perceived. They're thinking about how this should be perceived.
Mm-hmm.
And we come up with, like, in our care business, we want to be the number one employer in social care, best employer in social care. So people might go, that's fucking, what a weird, shouldn't it all be about the level of care you're providing with your young people that you look after? And I'm like, well, yeah, it maybe it should be. But you know what I believe is that we're really passionate. If we're the number one employer, we have the best people, the most motivated people, the best environment, best retention, they'll deliver the best service to the... Yeah. And so it's an obscure vision for a fast growth kind of business, which actually should all be care-centered.
There's a psychological influencing mechanism there, which everyone uses every day, which is reciprocity. If I do something nice for you, you're going to feel compelled to do something nice for me.
Yep.
So actually, if you think about that with your team, your employees, if you want the end result to be 7-star service for the people your carers are working to help, actually, if they are treated with that, they will pass that on. That there's a psychological logic there, but I think lots of people miss it. I imagine you're doing it because it's the right thing for you to do for your people, and that's what you buy into. But also the consequence of that is that behavior that they absorb from you will go towards your customers, like it just will.
100%. So talk to me. I'm interested in this transition that you went from the international environment, the sporting environment, and you come in, you walk into Dartmouth.
Yeah. No, I didn't go to Dartmouth first.
Sorry. Where was it? It was a hydrogen first one.
No, so I went to a brand that doesn't exist anymore, Baywatch & Clark, which is now an Adecco brand that they've completely rebranded. So I was, this is going to sound a bit rugby boy. It was the off season. Yeah. I was at Fox Hills Golf Club in Surrey, having a coffee with a mate, doing some planning for next season. We may have been in the range, doing some planning for next season. And we were having a conversation in like one of the little coffee places there. And this guy, and I was talking about like my next move. What's my next move going to be within rugby? And either it was going to be not for 4 or 5 years, because kind of, I told you I'd followed my boss up through England Rugby. She wasn't going anywhere. The next layer wasn't going anywhere. So the pyramid's incredibly shallow in England at that time. So it was like, right, well, I probably need to work out that I'm going to try and get into a Premiership club, maybe academy coaching. What's that going to be? So we're chewing the fat. And basically, I just proposed to my fiance at the time, who's my wife now. And so there was another catalyst because we were renting, we wanted to buy somewhere. And England Rugby at that point was not paying fantastically well, had a lovely car, but not paying fantastically well. Yep. So we were just chewing the fat. And there was this guy who was in his like 50s. Okay, didn't look as young as you. Was in his 50s. And he was just sat and he just turned around. He was kind of like adjacent to us. He turned around and he said, I hope you don't mind me. I just was listening in. I'd love to talk to you guys about England Rugby, but also I work in recruitment. And I was like, I don't want to work in recruitment. Sort of salesy, sharky, pushing people in jobs. Don't want to do that. And he was like, well, let me tell you a bit more. And like, great question, isn't it? Let me tell you. So permission opener. So I was like, cool, talk to me. Anyway, long story short, he ended up, he turns out he was basically a rec to rec. And he was like, cha-ching, there's a placement here. And he set me up with a couple of interviews at different places. One was an exec search firm, and one of them was Baden & Clark. And I met a bunch of managers at Baden & Clark. They didn't do the sell me the pen interview question. And actually, I really enjoyed. One was like placing finance people into oil and gas. One was it placed people to consulting firms, and then the other one was placing people into business change and transformation. And my wife was a project manager in business change and transformation. So I thought, I know a bit about that. And so I'd be interested in meeting the manager for that. So I met the manager for that. And she turned out to be Baden & Clark's top biller.
Okay.
Like top biller. She didn't tell me that. The rec to rec told me that. And she didn't mention it throughout the whole interview. And I was like, that's interesting. So she was £1 million biller in 2009, right about then. And so I was like, I've heard that you're the top biller. And she was like, yeah. Well, I was like, how do you do that? Because if I'm leaving England Rugby, I'm not going to have a car. So I'm going to have to commute in. I was living in Watford. We were living in Watford, Marlow at the time. We were moving to Watford. I was like, I'm going to have to cycle into St. Paul's. So I need to make commission pretty quickly. Like I'm not young. I'm not 20. Like I need a salary. I know it's not gonna be very high, and I need commission quickly. Can you teach me? And she basically said, sit next to me, and I'll teach you everything I know. And so I did that for a year. I sat next to her for a year, working. I was originally working contract desk, placing people into like GSK and BA, and I just learned from her through osmosis. And she was great at giving coaching feedback on calls and stuff like that. Amazing. Brilliant. And then my teammate who was working the perm desk left. And I said to her, I was like, can I work a split desk? She was like, no. I was like, well, no one else is doing it. There's a bunch of work over there. And she said to me, you can work it until we hire someone else. And I said, if I do a really good job, can we not hire someone else? So I had the best of both worlds because I had runners out, and every so often I'd drop a perm placement, and it was great.
Yes.
So I was doing that. And then I got an opportunity to move to Hydrogen Group.
And so you come, when you make that leap,
yeah,
you've come from that high standards environment with England, and you jump in, and then you were saying earlier that you were surprised about something.
Yeah, so I was surprised by, so that was a very big sales environment. So our sales floor was like upwards of 120 people, different brands in the Adecco group.
Yeah. Is this on one floor?
One floor, amazing. Pillars every so often, fax machine's still there, ticking over. I think our CRM was like Bond Adapt or something, like black and white. Phones with cords, like, bell on the wall, first deal, run around, etc. So it was that, which I actually could, that competitive environment was quite helpful for me.
Yes.
Because I was older than the majority of the people who I joined with.
Right.
I knew I needed to make comp in a couple of months so that we could potentially get a mortgage, etc. So I was focused, I was head down, and I was cycling, it was probably like 25, 30K every day to get in. So I was always like first in, showers downstairs, put a suit on for the first time, for 5.5 years. Yeah. But I was always, and I would finish, start early, finish late. I was putting a shift in. But I was amazed how people would go to a client meeting, but it would be a client meeting.
Right.
They just go for a walk around London for an hour. And I remember I went to a client meeting and met someone, and they were like, should we go for an ice cream? I was like, what? Are you kidding me? So there was just this concept that I was like, no, there's an opportunity here to better my life, and my new wife's life. What do you not see this? And lots of people didn't. And there was a certain amount of attrition that just happens, and people would come and go. But actually what I realized in a recruitment environment is if you can stick around and be consistent and do what you say you're going to do to candidates and clients, actually you can do really, really well.
Yes.
And so I guess the change was I just didn't see people grabbing the opportunity that in a sporty environment, they were walking all over each other to get the opportunity.
Talk to me about the leadership teams and companies you're talking to today. What are they worried about today when it comes to leadership? Because we're in a really rapidly changing world.
Yeah. What are they worried about today? So, January 21, I handed my notice in, left Dartmouth and set West Peak up. And West Peak, the kind of the hypothesis was that lots of the suppliers that were coming to me when I'm internally were like one person bands, maybe a bit stale, not very contemporary. Very sector specific because they were just in recruitment. And actually I was like, what about SaaS tech businesses? Like, how are they managing people? How are they managing salespeople? Like, let's get some of that. And so actually the hypothesis was, or not very credible. And so the hypothesis was, I want to build an Avengers Assemble model of like amazing facilitators that are all ours. So no associate model, great backgrounds, and then build something where we can go into businesses and reverse engineer a solution from where they want to be to where they are now. All right. Wow. And we do that completely sector agnostically. So across every industry and still some elite sports as well. The common theme of the last 12 months of sales conversations, like discovery conversations, and really it's like a burning platform now. The last 6 months it's really ramped up. And we're actually analyzing a lot of these conversations with AI now to look for patterns, is disengagement in their employees. So actually it's hard. It's a harder marketplace and becoming increasingly more complex and harder to operate in. So people are not seeing the same rewards in all areas of businesses than they were for the same inputs. So there's a disconnect there. You've got leaders saying we need to go 120% to get 80, and employees saying, whoa, like I'm pretty fried. Or actually, I don't want to work in. I don't want to give you 120%. I want to give you my 100%, which is probably 60%, but I want to give you my 100% because that's what I'm paid for. So it's a disengagement thing. And if you look at Gallup's World of Workplace kind of review was released a little while ago, and it was saying that 70% of employees are disengaged. Like that is a cost. So there's that. The other bit, you've got like ways of working, and I'd bundle up into like, are we hybrid? Are we work from home, like so virtual, or are we all in the office, or are we what's going on? Like I was having a conversation this morning with a mate of mine at school drop off. I'll try and protect him. That's broad enough. And his business he's back in. They were like, we will never bring you back in. Okay. He will never be back in. They're back in 2 days a week and have been for 9 months. And they are now re-looking at some people that they signed off compressed contracts. So working a full contract, but in 4 days. They are now reviewing actually whether compressed contracts are for them or whether they're going to put people back up to 5 days. So I think you've got disengagement in employees. You've got businesses not really having a Scooby about what way of working is effective and efficient and palatable for today and for the future. And then really big one that I'm loving looking under the hood at the moment is the impact of AI in how people are doing their day to day, or complete like ostrich effect with AI. Complete ostrich effect of AI. So
how many people come into the ostrich effect?
Oh, like an overwhelming number. And it shocks me because I think like running a leadership development business I've got a bunch of curious people, not lazy, curious people who want to maximize effectiveness. So, we and a lot of what we do is bespoke. It has a skeleton and a philosophy, but a lot of it's bespoke. So, creating a bespoke 12-month leadership program is a lot of design. It's a lot of design and a lot of people hours. So when I had one of my team come to me like 6 hours after we just signed a contract, like, ta-da, it's ready to go. I was like, you're going to have to walk me through how you did that, because like I'm pretty good at putting stuff together. That was fast. And they're like, well, like you should see the prompts that we've built already to be able to do that. And so, I was coming up on the train today. I was probably in my paid subscription of ChatGPT more than I was in any other app. Because I know the power of it, and I of course I then sense check it against my experience, etc. Because AI is a very good salesperson as well. ChatGPT is an amazing salesperson. But if I give you another example, so a law firm, and one of the leading retailers in the country right now.
Yep.
Both customers of ours. Both are working with us on developing a leadership program. When I bridge the subject of how are your people and your leaders leveraging the benefits of AI to make their work product more effective and ensure they're communicating with their teams better. Yep. The answer was, we're not ready for that yet, and I doubt we will be for 12 to 18 months.
Yes.
Incredible. And so my I can't help but give the feedback. My feedback is, my suggestion is that actually we look together now at some ways that we can begin to show some early wins with this, because otherwise I really think there is a business critical risk with any business right now that doesn't want to begin to understand how to leverage AI to maximize their market potential.
100%. Yeah. I think you've got to think about becoming AI native, and that's a journey.
Yeah.
And actually, as people embrace it, they'll start to understand and leverage the value it can offer. And look, it's a tool to expedite, isn't it? And support, accelerate productivity.
Yeah.
You still need to be architecting it the right way.
Completely.
Yeah. And still need to be understanding the problems and issues that your customers have, and just using it to accelerate your ability to deliver your goods and services to them. It's it's a fascinating space, and it's interesting that you talk about this kind of ostrich thing, the head in the sand piece, which is, I was wondering, and I wanted to know from you, what percentage of companies do you think it is that actually are just feel like they're not ready for it, and actually not ready for it is that limiting belief around we're not quite sure how to take the first step.
It's weird because when you're operating within your environment,
yes,
when you're operating in your environment, you might be an early adopter. And I think there are, when I'm talking to individual leaders, managers, ICs within businesses, there are early adopters who are probably keeping it like a little secret at the moment. I am smashing it right now, but I'm not going to tell anyone that actually I can get a head start on my project management or my finance, my accounts payables or whatever.
So actually the company's unaware of how their business is using it.
Yeah.
It's probably the bigger issue.
I think there is, I think there's a misdiagnosis of it's too early for us, because I think there are people that will be experimenting with it and having lots of wins. And so I think my call out to business leaders is have a conversation with your people about not are we, who it should be, where are you seeing the benefits in your day to day that we can learn from and build, AI native. I agree. I think lots of businesses are a long way from that. But I think the first starting point is then working out who is adopting AI in their day to day now, where they can cross-pollinate that across other teams, what they can learn from. And then once they've done that listening and that discovery, then come up with a strategy.
Great. And so you need a leadership team, first of all, that's going to embrace it.
You need a leadership team, first of all, that embrace change.
Yes.
And know how to land it.
I was having a conversation with someone today who's talking about this experimentation. That he was talking about a business that the founder runs on experimentation. So everything's an experiment. Experiment, learn, go. And I talk about how with our teams, I talk a lot about wiping the canvas clean every time. That guys, we've got to clean the canvas. Because people come at it through the lens of what they're already doing or how things used to be done. And you have to be prepared to have that kind of beginner's mindset and just be prepared to go, look, let's just go with a clean canvas on this. Misconception of AI is that actually it's as a leadership team, you can just wipe the canvas clean. Just say don't worry about how you do things today. Just kind of look at it as to how it could be done using some AI tools and to support you.
I think there's a trust thing as well. I think there's a trust thing. You see, I saw a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, there was loads of posts about how people are using AI image generators to fraudulently create receipts for expenses. I was like, okay, fine. And if I speak to think about some of my friends, dull thing, okay, not business, but meal planning at home, super dull. And I was like, well, I don't do that anymore. I don't worry about what's in the shop because we just get AI to work out, this is what we like. We've got 2 kids, etc. this, we need 7 dinners. We shop at this supermarket. We need this shopping list to be available. It's like, done. And they looked at me and they were like, yeah, but don't you feel out of control? Like, no, I feel really in control of the things that I need to care about. That is something I don't need to care about.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a trust bit there, and there's a trust in, am I giving up control? And control's important for lots of people because it's linked to ego, it's linked to meaning, it's linked to importance. I'm giving up control of doing this piece of work. And that's the misconception, that actually you're not. You're actually elevating your ability to do higher value work.
But it's control of change again, isn't it? It's control which is limiting change.
Yes.
That's the point.
Yeah, completely. And I think coming back to you talking about change management and that Lean Six Sigma team, there's I did a bit of fact finding with a business we're about to kick off a big project with, and some of the discovery, the feedback came from their people was that they're not good at landing change. Okay, not good at landing change. And I was presenting back to the rest of the team, they're like, we are fantastic at landing change. I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to give you 2 scenarios of change, and you tell me if they landed well or not in the business. I gave them scenarios, and one, they'd done a pilot, and then they cascaded the lessons learned, etc. And the other one, they just went, as of today, this is how we do stuff. I was like, okay, which of these works? And we had a conversation about that. I was like, so it's actually your skill set and knowledge about change management is here. Your application of it and your self-awareness is down here. But also there's one other thing that they were missing. And this came out time and time again in the analysis with their people. Like, we don't know whether we want to commit to operating in this new world of change, because you're just going to change it again. Because the world's been so volatile and people have been going left, right with lots of changes. And one of the biggest things for me that I want every leader that we work with to learn is that when you are changing something, it's as important to tell everyone what will not be changing for a period of time so that they have a foundation to anchor to.
Yes.
Otherwise, that's why we see this 70% disengagement. That's my hypothesis. There's so much changing that actually I think a lot of people are like, well, if I don't change, it'll come back around again. Yeah. And then I'll be in the right place.
I think that there's that. And I think there's just a kind of real question mark against society, humanity, and all of those much broader topics right now, which is that if everyone requires purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And AI is a threat to that purpose. It's a threat to that. Everyone, whether you like it or not, in recruitment right now, if you ask a whole team, is AI a threat to your job? They'd all answer, yeah. 90% of them would answer yes. Yeah. And so they might not want to ask that question, right? And I think that is what leads to disengagement. And so you have to tackle the real issues and problems and address those. So you have to be able to be prepared to say, you're absolutely right, it might well do. And what we're going to do is we're going to go on a journey together to mitigate that, to navigate it, and to ensure that we work together to engineer a place in where we complement it, we embrace it, we complement it, and we're at the forefront of it. Yeah. And the markets will change, but you've got to get into that story. You can't neglect it, and you can't, and that will be a huge impact on disengagement right now, because disengagement is lack of sense of purpose, and there are more things which are challenging that purpose in the world, whether it's robotics. So in fact, you're not, but I'm going to end up doing a lot less recruitment, kind of sales recruitment podcast kind of stuff, because it was never my intention, actually. I ended up leaning into it because of my buddies and a whole number of other reasons. And actually, I'm really fascinated by science, technology, innovation. And so my new stuff started this week. I actually love leadership, you probably tell as well, right? So leadership will exist, but I'm into tech and innovation. And this week I ended up having a podcast and with a European Space Agency engineer who was building rovers for Mars, and he came in with a humanoid.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so humanoid's kind of wandering around and high-fiving and waving, and then joined us for the podcast. And so, it's real, but when that humanoid was out and walking down the street, the world stands still.
Yeah. I mean, like 2 examples, like that. We just opened up in the US
Yeah.
About 8 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and we were in Austin for a big event. And I'd never seen a Waymo before, like self-driving car, taxi, the order of an Uber, like mad. So I was just like proper tourist, like I just kept declining Ubers and seeing my stars drop until I got a Waymo. And I was like, right, cool, now I'm in. And then also like little delivery robots. So these little delivery robots, they're just like little cars with little flags up, just driving around, dropping off food. And then when you come to like humanoid stuff, I don't know, are you familiar with the business Figure? Yeah. Like, so I've been following Figure for like a year and a half.
Yep.
And it's incredible. Like if you think about the human
Brett Ashcott also.
Yeah. Who made his money in recruitment tech, funnily enough, to start with. But you know, what he's done with humanoid robotics and then inserting AI into that process and the collaboration that you can see in the way those robots are working, and they are live on a BMW, you know, supply chain in a logistics center already. You can see the pressure, you can see the advancement, and I think there's some really interesting advancements and opportunities in human psychology and the world of work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And these things are challenging them, and you've got to embrace them as a leader. You've got to recognize, as with any business, about recognizing the biggest problems and opening them up for debate and addressing them and leveraging them. And I always say in every problem is a fantastic opportunity. Yeah. And so I think that from a leadership perspective, you've got to help businesses recognize that there is a existential kind of fear and threat and to the purpose that you're trying to create in your organization. And if you don't address that, you're effectively not addressing what is concerning and diverting your team's attention. And where that comes back to your first point. So you raised 3 points that people are worried about. And the first one is you said that, well, we're having to can you do 120% to get 80% of the productivity? And that stems from the same issue, which is that people are saying, well, the axe is not as sharp. And instead of sharpening their axe, what people are doing, they're going, look, can you swing it harder and more times? Yeah. And what's happening is that your team is desperate for a sharper axe. And what you don't realize is that today's technology is providing you with something more efficient than an axe. And at some point, you're going to turn around and you're going to have a team of people that hold axes. Right. And there's going to be a load of robots and a few other people and people doing something very different to what you do. Yeah. And so the role of leadership, I think, today is to embrace it, understand it, and ensure that they take the people that are in the business in your team on a journey to explore those things and embrace them and understand them. You don't have to make radical change right now, but you have to at least acknowledge that the world's changing. Yeah.
And I completely agree. And I think that is what you've just described there is what I would call quite historically a really advanced leadership skill set. Like actually, you know, being able to understand individuals and what drives them, their why, being able to observe the current state of innovation, the marketplace, being able to let go. There's an emotional intelligence piece here as well about being able to let go what's got us here, because that's not going to get us there. And then there's a storytelling piece about how do you build a narrative and storytell with your team to be able to help them with you paint the picture of what it's going to look like when we're operating differently. And then there's about, you know, you talked about experiments and wiping the canvas clean. Like actually everyone is figuring this out as we go. Yeah. So there are like P&L and shareholder kind of needs for profit, etc. But also I think the role of a leader is to create some buffer, budget, capital, time, so that these experiments can happen. Because without us actively in our businesses experimenting and working out what works for our people in our market at this state of innovation, then you're going to fall behind.
And there's a thing called I don't know if you heard of it. It's called human in the loop. Yeah, and it's kind of a technology process, I guess, and a mindset, and actually going to be a technology process, which is where, you know, AI will do a series of tasks or level of productivity, and then will loop in that loop of completing that task, the human will contribute a certain amount to it.
Yeah.
And that the amount of that is going to reduce and reduce down as the power of AI and technology improves, to the fact that it'll be, that it'll get to a place where you will be architecting what that loop should even be doing or looking like before looping you into it. And I guess the point is that it's just accepting that as a business leader today, you, your customers and your team are already in the loop. They're already in there.
Yeah.
They might only be doing 5% of it, but with what you're suggesting there is that there are more advanced people which have basically got automation AI doing more of the loop.
Yeah.
And it's just about, are you going to embrace this and work out how much of that loop that you're in, whether that's recruitment or it's in logistics or whatever it is, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But how much of that loop are you looking to embrace technology to complete? The issue is, again, that people don't really understand their loop.
Yeah.
In practical businesses, they don't understand the entire steps to the sales process.
Yeah.
And so they think about it. Oh, well, I do compliance and I do this and I do that. But actually, no, it's a loop. It's a loop. Take recruitment. It's from the moment of initiation to finding a role through to fulfilling it. There is a loop.
Yeah.
And that loop has a huge number of stages. It's down to you to define the ultimate loop, how you want it to operate, and what you can then automate.
Yeah. We can go a layer more complex.
Don't do it.
Actually, a business ecosystem, you've got a series of individual functional loops.
Yep.
They intersect like a Venn diagram.
Yep. Flywheel.
But then that's 3D.
Yep.
So actually, all of those loops intersecting, and that, the flywheel effect in terms of actually, we can automate and turn those faster, which makes the machine go faster. I think you're right that lots of businesses, they once had loops, but actually those loops aren't followed. So they had worked out their systems and processes, but actually it's easier not to do that.
Yep.
That's not going to work in the future, because if you've got the AI agent or the process being done by someone else and you're not going to follow the loop, then you're going to break the machine, and you're going to lose a lot of performance. But also then thinking about how these loops interact with each other, I think there's a real strong place for humans there. Like, actually, how does the bit that we do or will do that's smaller, the collaboration and the timing and the value that each of those humans in those loops do together, there's a really cool opportunity, I think, there for some like game-changing teamwork in collaboration with the AI.
Yes.
And you'll have businesses that really get those cycles and those loops working in harmony together. Really,
give me an
really
example of that. So just give me an example of what those loops might look like in a particular industry or business.
Let's go into like food retail, for example. Yeah. Okay, just at a very high like macro level, you've got suppliers. All right, so you've got suppliers who will need to deliver their produce to the retailer. The retailer will need to deliver that around their system to their stores. All right, their stores will then sell that to a human.
Yep.
Okay, so you've got all of those loops going on there.
Yep.
And actually, if you just look at that, what's happening now through algorithms anyway, but augment that with AI, the minute a chicken is sold, another chicken is already purchased. All right, and it's delivered.
Yes.
But actually, you could imagine a lot of that happening without any human intervention at all. The human intervention in those various loops is going to be actually quality of chicken. Don't know why we're talking about chickens. Quality of chicken from the purchaser.
Yep.
It's going to be about actually, how do we safely transport that? The quality control of the transportation of the chicken so it doesn't go off.
Yep.
And then actually, how is that presented to the human in a way they want to buy it? And the changing demands and needs of that.
Yep.
So that's one very simple like 2D. But then you think about the finance functions, the procurement, the human resources, all of those loops interacting along. It
becomes a real matrix, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like cross-functional kind of matrix.
Yeah.
And what you're suggesting there is that the leadership team need to be spending more time in the design and architecture and planning and optimization of what you described there as those loops of the business.
I think it's a leader's responsibility
Yep.
to. So let's come back full circle to the beginning of the conversation.
Yep.
We talked about what does like excellent leadership look like? Understanding the game you're playing. So what game are leaders playing right now? Leaders need to understand that there are loops in their business, there are processes that are repeatable and scalable, and they need to have defined those and be measuring whether those are functioning and working for their customers and their people or not. All right. Then you've got the players. So actually, have I got the right players? Starters, finishers, etc. Have I got the right players? Are my players skilled up to operate within that loop? And are they given the agency to make that loop function better with the best tools they can? AI is going to be one of those tools.
Yes.
So I think that is a responsibility of every leader right now, business leader, and the leaders within that organization, to be thinking, yeah, how do we ship our product to provide our service today really, really well, right? But also, how are we developing ourselves and our people to understand in this methodology of getting ready for when we can supercharge stuff? Because if you haven't got those processes defined now, then you can't lay a nitro onto something and expect it to be really sustainable and efficient and effective. It will break.
And it comes back to that point, which is that people want a sharper axe.
Yeah.
They don't want you to try and push the blunt axe harder and faster.
Yeah.
That just drives disillusionment. And
yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you are talking to companies almost about the design of how they're embracing these challenges. So a part of it sounds like you're very much instrumental in not only designing the leadership program, but also helping leaders to define the problems and opportunities that they're looking to address. It feels like there's a bit more consultancy in the process that you're going through.
You're right. There is. And I think, I never wanted to have a business that was just shipping off the shelf.
Yes.
Like, here's workshop 1, learn about situational leadership. Because actually what I'd seen, like every business is different. We've gone into the variety of challenges and opportunities that every business has. So the first bit for us is, understanding actually whether this business wants to work with us. Like, are we going to partner up? Are we going to play nicely in the sandpit together? That's the first bit. Once we get past that and they think we're credible, the first thing we want to do is actually sit down with the stakeholders in the business and say, right, you want a leadership program. Why do you want a leadership program? What spurred this on? Bad engagement scores are not the right answer. Like, let's go a layer down. And actually, like, if I look at an example right now, we're working with a business who have basically said to us, this is our 5-year strategy. We don't know what leaders we're going to need in the business, what the skill set of those leaders is going to look like in 5 years' time.
Yep.
I don't have a crystal ball. Okay, but I can tell you the direction of where we're going. And actually, so what we looked at, well, in 5 years' time, we know we're going to need, looking at what you're going to do, you're going to need leaders with a different skill set in the organization than the ones you have now. The leaders you have at different levels are going to need to have leveled up because they'll be doing different roles, different responsibilities. But also succession planning is huge.
Right.
So what we're endeavoring to do is look at like the as is today and then the to be in the future as best we can, and using our experience of supporting other businesses that we've seen grow exponentially, scale and sell.
How big a business is that you were talking about?
That is a 250 person business.
Yeah. So not a huge business.
But doing 200 million.
Ah, right. Okay.
So not...
200 million is in recruitment space?
Yeah.
Okay. But 200 million of turnover?
200 million turnover. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 35, 25, 30, 40 million of NFI, I guess. Yeah. And so it's a good business. But that's interesting that they're thinking about that. That's really strong. And it's great to think that it's good to see that people have got the foresight, because preparing yourself and making sure you're armed with the right people with the right mindsets to address the change that we're going through is absolutely critical. And I think that one of the things I say to all leaders today, and someone said it to me yesterday, this morning in an interview, a CFO said to me, I come into every day thinking about how do I optimize anything I'm going to touch? How do I improve it? And I think that that's the simple measure. Progression is the simple single measure that you have of any leader in your business. If you have a leader in your business today, which is maintaining what you're doing, they're managing what you're doing, they need to go.
Yeah.
That's it. Either they step up or they ship off, because they have to be progressing it. They have to be improving the way that your accounting function is operating, the way that marketing is being automated, the way that if not, you are not only not progressing, you're falling rapidly behind in today's world.
Yeah, I mean, it's the opportunity cost, isn't it? You've got a finite amount of resources, a finite amount of time. The world's moving really, really fast. So actually, everyone who occupies a seat,
Yes,
it's your responsibility to make sure they're set up for success. Like one of the, I shared like a framework on LinkedIn this week, which was like a performance management framework. And I had some feedback from people. They were like, wow, there's a lot in that process flow. And I was like, yeah. But look at the first 9 steps in it. They're all you as the leader. Like, this is for you to make sure you haven't really screwed this up.
Yes.
Because yes, at some point you've made a decision. As long as your interview process and your talent ID is on point, you've made a decision. You think this human being is going to be a rock star in your business. So tell me one of 2 things. One of 3 things. Either they were lying, okay, or they've gone off the boil, all right, which we can get to the bottom of, or it's you. Which one is it, and where do we start? And with every leader I work with, they want to start with the first 2. Well, maybe we made a mistake with hiring, maybe they were lying, or maybe they've got something going on at home. Yeah. I'm like, no. First thing we do as a leader with performance issues is we look at us. Yeah. Like, what could we have done? How have we broken our loop?
I think it's the first question in most conversations. Actually, when I had it with Matthew the other day, and I turned around and we weren't performing in some area, and I just said to him, my first question to him is, what am I doing that is getting in the way of you helping you to execute this? Yeah, because we're underperforming in this area, and I think it has to be one of the first questions, because I don't want to put any unnecessary pressure onto anybody. Yeah, if there's something that I'm doing that's getting in the way. Yeah, and so because it starts with me. Mm-hmm. Everything's got to start with me. I'm leading a business, right? And so, don't get me wrong, not start with me in terms of an ego perspective, but the point is I'm taking the decisions to put into the leadership team. Mm-hmm. So if I'm doing something that maybe is I've appointed a leader, which is, well, actually, there is something you've done. You've appointed this other person in the team, which happens to be influencing. Okay, well, I was unaware of that. And so, I agree. It's interesting that someone would look at that performance thing and go, why is the first 9 steps about me?
Yeah. Because it's about the other person. It's their performance. It's like, but let's come back to the like, the genesis of this person's interaction with you in the world. 100%. You were like, they are amazing.
But most importantly, they're the things that you can fix so quickly. Why do I ask that question? Because I can go, oh, you haven't got that. I didn't give you this. I didn't give you that. I didn't. Well, that's fine. Yeah. You need a red pen as well as a black pen. You need 10 minutes more of my time. You need, those are all things I can influence. Boom, 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 boom. Super quick, rapid improvement. Right. Also, it demonstrates that you're taking accountability yourself, right? Which is a level of empathy and emotional quotient. I want to get something else with you quickly.
Cool.
So you mentioned something earlier. You said it a couple of times.
Uh-oh. What have I said?
Yeah, which is that you said, I guess that's my ego. What does that mean? I sense that's a bullshit statement.
That hurts. No, it doesn't hurt at all. That hurts. That's right. What does it mean? It means, right, I am aware that I am an incredibly stubborn human being.
Right.
I'm an incredibly stubborn human being. I like to be right a lot. I don't mind being wrong, which is a weird dynamic. And I get a load of dopamine from knowing that either me or my business or my team have done something exceptional.
Right.
And I think that creates an impact on your personality. I think it just does. And so I'm always trying to keep my ego in check, but at the same time,
I think it's bullshit. This all sounds a bit bullshit. I get it. I understand what you're saying, right? But I think that.
But it's crap, Ben.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I think you use it to disarm. I think you're using it to remind yourself, being too self-orientated when you're talking and thinking about things. I think that it's self-belief. I think that there's a level. I think you've got a high level of self-belief that you're managing.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think I think you've got me on two fronts there. The stubbornness and the ability to delay failure breeds self-belief. I think resilience is an output rather than something you need to develop.
Yep.
I think, it's hard won. And I think you're probably correct that I do use that ego word just to check myself. Because look, there's also an element of imposter syndrome with all of us. Like it's weird. Like I believe I fundamentally believe that I can apply myself to quite a lot of things and do okay. And if I narrow it down into my niche, I'll do quite well. But I also have a load of imposter syndrome. Like coming on a podcast, chatting to you, like there was definitely, when we began chatting, there was definitely imposter syndrome. I'm like, Ezra's done all this stuff. Like, look at what he's achieved. Like, why would he want to talk to me? So there's definitely that goes on inside my head.
Insecurity, like a slight insecurity.
Yeah.
And that comes back to that childhood bit, which is the fact that you weren't given the attention maybe that you should have been given. And so, you know how we said there's a yin and yang on everything, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is you've got this. That's just a trigger. It's not really an insecurity. It's a trigger that creates the resilience and strength.
Yeah, it probably is. It probably is. And also, it's something that I didn't consider until, well, not even like having kids wasn't even the trigger. It was probably the last couple of years, like last 2 years, just getting like being around 40.
Yeah.
I mean, like actually, like, what's made me, what environment has contributed to making me who I am today? What are all the ingredients that have made this?
Yeah.
And am I happy with those? And which of them do I want to continue to develop and change? And which of them do I want to lean into?
It's really weird, isn't it? There is definitely a phase. I went through a very similar thing in my 40s where I reckon, and I think I'm still going through that process of really much better understanding myself and the things that drive me and my motivations. And you there's a weird thing, you do take more control. And actually, as you get to 50, you're going to find it even more because you kind of, I tell you what happens when you get to 50. For me, it's been starting to map exactly what I want the next 5 or 6 years to go. And it's hence one of these reasons I'm doing the podcast. I've been building leadership teams since 1999, really. And what happened was when I started doing that, I was a sales guy. And then I started building my first leadership teams. And all of a sudden, I just become completely insular. And I wasn't the CEO that was out meeting customers. And I just found people better at that than me. Put them into the leadership team and continue to kind of build leadership teams. And so one of the reasons I'm doing this is that I'm terrible at saying no to anything that doesn't contribute to driving the goal of the business. And so that means social events or meeting people. If I don't see it directly correlates, it's just like, and I'm not ruthless like that. It's just my intuition. It's just like, no, I'll give you a call back, and it's like, I'm focused on something right now. And so this platform for me was about the fact that it was about meeting people. And to do that, I had to start saying yes. And it's been wonderful for that. It's been really, there are certain decisions I've made in life which have been really liberating. One of the others was actually embracing failure. I'll come back to that in a minute. But and so what's happened is I've created an environment where I have to say yes to people. And I now enjoy saying yes to people more than I do looking for a superstar kind of guest. Yeah, and trust me, like I could go into my network tomorrow and I could start bringing, some celebrities or whatever. But actually, really enjoy saying, I've got to a place where I'm just saying yes. And that's actually scratched the itch that I was doing for this. And so, but that's come about by understanding how I want my 50s to look. Yeah. Which is meeting more people, having more interesting conversations, learning and growing. Because actually the old me was too insular and not focused on what I was doing. So it's interesting you talk about that journey. And then the other point I was going to raise there as well was the embracing failure. I think about 10 years ago, I started, and I remember, I can't remember exactly, but there was a moment in time where I just really fessed up to something. I just kind of was like, no, that was all my fault. And weirdly, I walked out of the meeting feeling really good. Yeah. And I guess it was interesting. We did a podcast the other day, which is with a guy called Harris Tostos and Jim, who I work with in
I've watched
early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Guy, I kind of reflect on that, and I was a bit of a Teflon leader at that point in time, kind of really tough and really kind of resilient and bulletproof. Although I was focused on people's development, incredibly, always trying to think about it, they'd have had no fucking idea, which if you've listened to it, you'll have heard him say.
Yeah.
And so I would never be dishonest, never hide failure, but I would never purposefully just kind of be open about it. And so when I'd done that, I was just at this moment of that felt fantastic sharing that.
Yeah.
Like really liberating. And since then, I probably take responsibility for too much. And I would suggest that sometimes that maybe negatively affects the accountability of my leadership team.
Yeah. It's interesting because if you were in a corporate and you were doing that, taking accountability for everything, like you'd have been like kneecapped by now.
Yes.
For like, because of the political empire building, etc. But actually I wonder whether there's more freedom for you because of how you do business, etc., that gives you that opportunity to do that.
Yes, it's a luxury.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a luxury. Although I don't know if you've got an environment where if your culture's right and you've got someone that's prepared to say, that's on me, I think that's liberating to the. I think that helps the leader, their manager. It takes a problem off the table for them.
Yeah.
Because you've opened the door for them, and actually you become easier to manage. Because I don't have to have a difficult conversation with you. Yeah. You've opened the door. It's on you've gone, hey, look, I fucked this up. It's now on the table. Let's just deal with it. Yeah. And the issue right now is that So I beg to differ that. I would suggest that in corporates, if you get the balance of that right, your manager will like you because you will be the person that they find it easier to address the problems in their team, because they're going to be measured on that performance anyway.
Yeah, I think
you know better though.
No, I just think I think in some corporates, yes, I agree. If you've got the culture right, the environment right, etc., where transparency and trust and vulnerability to an extent are rewarded and reciprocated, completely agree. Yeah. I probably have got some hang-ups from the past where I could just imagine, and I've had too many stories of people being like, yeah, but that was used against me in a different scenario. Someone got hold of that, or you were the person that screwed that up.
Yes.
Like that. So I agree with you that it should be the status quo, and we should push for that environment. I think my comment was probably off the cuff of me running through some stories where people are like, yeah, that was used later.
Yeah, you're right. You are. I'm thinking it from this kind of, this perfect world. The issue is that there's a lot of corporate cocksucking that goes on in these big businesses, and the stuff I just fucking hate. Like the kind of just nothing's merit based, and it's based on, are you like you say, the politics of it all.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why I have opted out of huge environments, because there was not very much of that in England rugby from the time of my career. I was buffered from probably quite a lot of the politics at council level, and then coming into business, whenever I saw something that wasn't truly meritocratic or right and was politicking, creating empires, I was a bit like, that's terrible.
Yes, like, it repulses you. If
don't want to be there.
Yeah. I feel exactly the same way. I'm the same with the way when I have this radar of people being inauthentic to me. Mm-hmm. When that hits, it's like almost they may as well be speaking Japanese, because I almost just disconnect. I'm like, this person's just lying. It's just being inauthentic. Yeah. My ability to collaborate with that is unbelievable. Yeah. It's like this radar just switches off, and it's the same. It repulses the moment I see a kind of political move like that, or a lack of accountability, or someone protecting their ass rather than focused on the right objective. It's alarming. It repels you if you've got the right culture and the right mindset. Yeah. And in fact, I've seen leadership teams which repel it.
Yeah, completely. Like actually, that toxic individual, and that's where you come back to like nipping that stuff in the bud. Like if you begin to see that, I think it was, I was listening to a podcast a couple of years ago, and it was the guy who runs Tristan Capital, who was like an almost NBA player. And he was basically like, they have a false start rule. So there are 30 rules for how you play the game at Tristan Capital.
Amazing.
I think I'm going to get this right. And I think they were etched on the inside of the glass or on the window, like something like that. But one of them was everyone gets a false start behaviorally. So everyone can have a false start. You can have one behavioral false start. All right. And we can rebuild. We can rebuild that trust. We can rebuild that behavioral social contract. But a second one, and we will help you find somewhere else to go. I'm like, yes, that's fair enough. Because I want to be in an environment where people come into work or log on to work, and I believe that everyone is there to do their best work.
Yep.
All right. At whatever charge they're at in terms of battery standpoint, they want to do their best work based on what they've got to bring today. What I can't stand is if, people are actively lying or deceiving to create some politics. However, I'm also aware people are stressed, fatigued, etc. And if someone makes a mistake, like a behavioral trust value mistake, if we can have an open conversation about it very quickly, leader to that person or whatever, if the proximity of that happening, there has to be a 48-hour window where you need to deal with that. And I think for me, my threshold is I'm willing to give you a pass. As long as I understand it, I'm willing to give you a pass on it. If it was not intentional to deceive me in the business, like fraudulently or whatever, I'm willing to give you a pass on that. If I do think it's fraudulent or damaging to the business or illegal, like you have to go.
Yes.
But I think one pass is important because we've all made mistakes.
Yeah. 100%. And you have to have real clarity over whether there's two things, isn't there? Clarity where the lines are around your values and expectations. And the second question is very simple, is have I helped the person to understand where those lines are? Yeah. Yes or no? If I have and they've stepped over them, it's on them. Mm-hmm. If I haven't, it's on us.
Yeah.
And so there's a level of, it comes back to that point which you said, defining the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And if someone accidentally steps over it, can do it once, steps over it twice, I've made it super clear.
Yeah.
And it comes back to that, I think your gamification piece, then we can kind of wrap up there, I think, which is just around, just look at the person in the room, and whether it's from a morals, effort, values, capability perspective, should they be in your starting 11? Do you want this person? You've only got 15 seats, let's say, right? And just look at them and go, are they in that 15 seats? What do they bring to that table which says that they are the best fullback or winger that would make your 15? And those they might be different qualities, but they really need to have them, and they need to be absolutely a game for what you need to in order for your team to win its next game.
Yeah, and also, like, just I guess my final point on that is, businesses change over time. The needs, the skill sets of those 15 change, and I think it's really important that leaders are looking at that 15 as they're good for now. They're the right people in the right seats for now, but also for me, a leader's responsibility is always to be thinking, in the future, where's my succession planning coming from? Actually, will I still need a fullback to be able to, kick off the left and the right, or actually, are they going to remove kicking from the game?
Yeah.
And that's where like the conversation about AI can come back. Because if you remove kicking from the game, all of a sudden you need a very different player in that position.
Absolutely. And I think that when I say this, by the way, I sound really brutal and ruthless with some of my views, but actually it's your role to help people understand what good looks like. Yeah, that we came back to that thing much earlier, and then help them get there. And then you measure progress over performance. If you don't see the progress, that's when it's time to go.
Yeah.
If they can't get to the bar and they're not showing the progress, you've tried all things you need to try, they're not helping themselves. That's the point they need to go. And so coming back to your leadership development piece, I love what you're doing, mate. I love your story and your energy, and I think it's going to be really interesting to follow your story over the next few years, because West Peak, like you said, the name is good, mate. The brand is strong. You're getting a good reputation, and that can create a kind of networking effect to your business. And hearing any man that's done the MSD and the Disabler and also those personal challenges, so much of it is over consistency and effort. And you mentioned discipline. Mm-hmm. So I'll be really interested to see how it all goes.
Thanks, mate. I've loved it. It's been a great chat.
Yeah, it really has. A pleasure to meet you.
Appreciate it. You too.
Cheers, mate.